Good morning, everyone. I'm really delighted to spend this morning with Jerome Russell, president and co-owner of the Russell family of companies. Part of the reason I'm so excited is that the Russell family has been a part of Atlanta history and Atlanta DNA for a long time. They've also been doing really, really well by doing great things in the community. This is not new for them, the way that it may be for a lot of people. And, we have this name for it called conscious capitalism, but they've been doing it for a long time. And so, Jerome, I would love for you to share with our audience from your perspective and, from your family history, what the actual payoff, that's what the subject of this podcast is. What is the economic, financial, hardcore, money in the hand payoff of conscious capitalism or doing good things in the community, for example?
Well, we're sitting right here at 504 Fair Street, where it all started in 1952. So we have taken this building that we built multiple businesses in, incubated entrepreneurs like a Egbert Perry, a T. Dallas Smith, a Noel Khalil,
wow,
and Artis Johnson, and I can keep naming them. They all are African American. They all have gone out and built successful businesses, employed multiple people. So the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurship is a 2.0 of who we are.
And I'm assuming that all of those businesses were for-profit businesses.
Yes,
so they weren't just doing good and not generating a profit, right? They were actually have been very, very profitable as they've been doing all these good things.
Absolutely.
So can you give our audience a more recent example and maybe go down a little bit into a specific case where you made a decision that actually benefited the community, benefited the employees, for example, benefited you or the company through generating profits? Can you give us a double click and just go down a little bit and give us maybe a specific example?
Oh, God. So, if you're profitable, you can grow and you can invest. So we believe that the more we can provide, if we're a profitable enterprise, it provides the opportunity to provide opportunities for others, okay? And provides opportunity to put people who normally may not have that opportunity, that may look like me, may look like you, an opportunity to shine. For example, I was going to catch a flight to, I don't know where I was going, but I was coming down at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, come down the escalator, catch the train, made eye contact with someone who I knew. I didn't exactly know who he was. I said, I've seen him. So he waits for me to come down the escalator, and I noticed he has the Concessions International shirt on, which is one of our companies. So I just tell him, I said, you all are doing a phenomenal job at the airport, and considering the pandemic, blah, blah, blah. And he told me, thank you for providing the opportunity. I mean, I was really humbled. And he went on to say that he runs the Sweetwater Bar on 831, and he feels like an owner. And he says that he was just so grateful that the family had provided the opportunity for him to have that type of feeling. I mean, it really, really touched me.
Right. And there's some portion of the economic benefit or profit of that business that flows upward to the Russell companies, yes?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. But so I said, and they are, because I'm watching the numbers. Right,
he's watching the numbers.
I'm watching the numbers, but don't really, I'm watching numbers. Right? So when a human being comes and articulate something like that to me we just happened to randomly run into each other. And I felt like he blessed me.
That's what we love to hear.
So it was pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly the kind of virtuous cycle that we hope to create through these conversations and through the conscious business movement. But sometimes you hear about companies or instances where it's not that easy, right? Where it's not all rainbows and butterflies and unicorns, where tough decisions need to be made, where it's not necessarily transparent that, if I make this decision that is humane, that, is for the greater good, that it's going to have the financial payoff. Do you have a thought or maybe even an example of the times when it's not that straightforward, or you maybe have to go on faith a little bit that doing the quote right thing or doing the humane thing is going to turn out financially?
Well, I think it comes down to the values
Okay.
of the organization. So we're family business, and the owners are family, and we're engaged, and the family values started with my mother and father. So when you're in that position, or when you're in a position where you have values, the decision, those difficult decisions, you rely on your values to make the decisions. Okay, and fortunately, we're diversified. I think one of the things that make us really unique as a family business, we're not a family business that's concentrated in one particular industry or business. We have like 3 to 4 to 5 that allow us the diversification. So maybe when one's not doing good, we have the other, so therefore we can lean on that to carry everything forward. So we've been blessed to be able to have a companies diversified, and so when there's sometimes those decisions we have to make, we can kind of, we can hold on, or we can do it for the greater good. Okay, so in some cases, some companies, they don't have those values. It's black and white.
All
Hey.
money. All right. And so I guess for what I'm hearing, and I want to make sure that I raise this up, in this conversation and also for our audience, that you're saying that sometimes you have the ability, but sometimes you do trade off short-term economic interest or profits for these other values.
Correct.
Yeah, sometimes you make the choice, like you're going to give up money in the short term, not forever, because like you said, you got to be profitable, but give up money in the short term for these other values.
Right.
What are some of the other values that you see that you said, okay, we're going to put the finances on hold for a second, or we're going to, make a trade-off here? What are some of those values that you think are really important?
The first one that comes is faith. You have to have some belief that there's a greater power and that will prevail. So I think faith is one. Integrity, honesty.
Those are good ones.
Yeah, I mean, those are the basis of being able to really, do what you say you're going to do, act the way you say, act the way you let your actions speak.
And so as we think about the Russell, Innovation Center, this center, I think that it's important that we understand that this feels to me like one of your platforms, one of the ways in which you are promoting that extended stakeholder, conscious, integrated way of doing business. Would you share for us a little bit more about some of the ways in which the Russell Innovation Center is doing that?
Wow, that's a very good question. Wow. So,
because I can feel your heart is in this place.
Yeah, that's what it's the spirit.
It is the spirit, it really is.
There's a spirit that when you walk in here that prevails, and a lot of it I think has to do with Jay. Okay, because when
he's the
Jay Bailey is the CEO, right?
Okay.
So when we decided to kind of drop this into a not-for-profit, and we kind of had a plan on what we were going to stand for. And then we went out and said, hey, we got to get someone to run this. And we talked to different people. We had a search firm. He just came out, really as kind of the inspiration in his view on what we needed, his story relating to who we are and what we was trying to accomplish. And it's just been a rocket ride since. And I mean, we're growing right now. We were a startup. Now we are entering into really a mature business, but we're still growing at a real rapid pace. So.
And I heard that you had all kinds of people. You have the UPS involved, CVS. You've had like multiple stages in here just in the week. You have a great event here tonight. So yeah, I mean the growth is pretty obvious.
Yeah, so I'll just like last night, Jamie Dimon was in town, and he has
This is the CEO of J of
yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, he's the CEO of J.P. Morgan.
Yeah.
Just for example, he says he asked the crowd. He says, "What do y'all think, the crowd? What do y'all think we move a day in movement of cash?" Somebody said a couple billion. He said $10 trillion. So that's the movement because they're a worldwide
Yeah.
company. So he gave a perspective of the United States and the world. And the United States is, a great country, but we also have our challenges.
Certainly.
And our opportunities are under us, black and brown. And even to the point where there needs to be immigration reform to really to lift the country because there's a evaporating middle class. All right. And then, of course, there are more births in people who are black and brown. So America will become a majority country by 2050. So we got to start realigning our conscious to how do we lift up because that will lift America.
And so I think this is a really great point that I want to make sure everybody understands. So you all have been doing that since the beginning of the company.
Correct.
Just as that, so the example that you gave of the person in the airport is an example of exactly what you just said that Jamie Dimon just seems like he's just getting onto.
Correct.
Y'all have been onto it for like 50 years.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, I want you to confirm this. This is exactly how you've grown.
Absolutely.
Right. So this virtuous cycle that we are now giving a name, calling it conscious capitalism, right, has been around, and it is like a universal truth, like you said. When you lift up people and you give them opportunities, those opportunities are profitable. It's not that you're just, it's not charity.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I would love for you to kind of expand on how you can see other companies that may just be getting onto this, that, Russell has been doing this and has grown profitably through doing that for years. What advice would you give to other CEOs as they're looking at this like, oh my God, we should lift up people? I mean, right? It seems like it would be obvious. So what's your, if you were sitting down with Jamie and saying, hey, listen, we've been doing this for 50 years, what would be your next statement? What would you say to him afterwards?
Well, it's not an entitlement. I think that's where we sometimes in the politics,
right?
It's called entitlements. I think maybe it should be renamed, opportunities
or investment.
Yeah, investment.
You're investing in humans.
Here are the numbers. I think one of the things that I realize is the more I get into here, we're not telling the story around the numbers. I mean, the data is there.
Well, tell us. This is the story.
Yeah. So the data, I think the data, depending on where you are, particularly in the South, is we have what we do know the data. There's a disparity of wealth. That's why this inflation thing is big because inflation favors those who have. All right, and it makes it tough for those who don't have.
Right.
So if it continues to accelerate at a very fast pace, it creates just more disparity in the system. So I think since your question was around CEOs, I think a lot of it has to do with acknowledging first there's a problem, and then there's a solution. And then from there,
and the solution is not a do-gooder solution. It's not. You're not doing it necessarily out of the.
Sure, it's not an entitlement.
Right.
Yeah, you have to structure it as an upward mobility opportunity, and then we have to also be brutally honest about race. Okay, you cannot deal with this without addressing the race issue, and the race issue.
Well, there are many race issues. So which specific race issue are you talking about?
Well, I mean, America, it tends to, come down to, black and white slavery and what happened around that, and then you have you have Hispanics who were they were indigenous to particularly the southern part, and some of there were wars fought 100 some years ago to get land disputes settled, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think that we have to figure out a way to create this uncomfortable discussion in a comfortable. I don't know if you can make it comfortable, but we got to learn how to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
And that's exactly. I mean, this is exactly what I want. This is the conversation that I desperately want to have, because even in conscious capitalism circles, everybody wants to stay with the sunshine and butterflies and rainbows part of this dialogue without dealing with the dark side, which I don't think you can really do this at all, not in an honest way, if we don't have this very hard conversation.
Correct.
It has to be had, right? That whenever it comes to talking about this, people don't want to invest in Black people because they think it's an entitlement, rather than seeing us as, the potential to be Herman Russell or the potential to be T. Dallas Smith or whatever. Like, people don't see that, right? They see it as a handout or whatever.
Right.
So I would like to have this conversation with you for like 15 years. So what do you think? You said, be honest about the problem, but I think that you have a unique perspective on the solution. What is the solution? So if we could have, you and me and other people could have this conversation with Jamie Dimon about let's get honest about this. The U.S. economy historically has not wanted to invest in Black people or brown people. The only way to turn this around is to do this, and it's not a handout. It is very profitable. It works, and it will grow the U.S. economy. It will grow individual businesses. It will make people very wealthy. It's not charity. So if you wanted to have that conversation and really get into the solution part of it, what would be the next thing that you would say?
I think we got to really mine the data.
Okay.
The data on consumer spending by ethnicity. And we probably will need to have multiple areas, a metro area. I mean, we're going to an urban society, right? So, and maybe a society of this, I wouldn't say it's rural, but it's people are living in resorts, right? It's near waters or high end. That is kind of what's happening. Some people, I've had some of my white friends say, hey, I'm getting out of Atlanta. The cold it's getting too black. Okay. Or crime is bad.
Crime is bad.
Yeah. So they're moving to
Blue Ridge and
Wilmington, North Carolina, or buying a house.
Yeah, whatever.
Or Sea Island. I mean, those are going to be kind of getaways, right? So I think we have to really we have to look at the data and start looking out into the future, and then reverse engineering it back to some type of physical policy that addresses education, healthcare, business, and we really have to understand what it means and monitor the activity and the programs that we're going to put in place.
And the ROI.
Right.
And prove out the ROI.
Yeah.
That investing in Black and brown and typically underserved people it actually pays off. It really does. Right. It's not just very fair.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out how to, and I'm getting better at it. So gentrification. Okay. So the word gentrification is happening here. Is normally most people say, well, it's an area where higher income whites are going to move into, here in Atlanta, into areas that maybe traditionally have been run down, or maybe African American, and it is revived, okay?
Right. The Beltline.
Yeah, exactly.
For those of you who don't know, you can Google it.
However, I think one thing that I do know is that you can't have communities of poor people, okay? We have to have areas.
Or you can, and they're poor and they're run down and all the social ills or whatever.
Yeah, it will continue to, you have to get incomes, higher incomes into these areas. So I think that we need to figure out a way to get Black middle class, maybe Hispanic, working class, middle class people back in, get them engaged in the schools. And I think that that's the story we have to start telling. Because the way I see it, back in the 70s here in Atlanta, that's how the black middle class areas evolved, and there was a upward mobility movement of that generation, which is my generation, because I grew up during the 70s, of prosperity. Okay, we don't have that now. This generation that we're in now, they're not living in and going and participating in the public schools. If you have means, you go, and you maybe go to Gwinnett, or you may go to, if you live in Atlanta, you're going to send your kids to private school, and then you have these charters coming in that are kind of bringing a different flavor to education. So it's just really fragmented right now, and that fragmentation is creating stagnation.
Agreed. So let's go into the conversation, about wealth inequality and Jamie Dimon and all this, because like I said, this is the conversation I've really desperately wanted to have. Is if you wanted to have that very difficult conversation about the wealth inequality, because even in our last Conscious Capitalism, Conscious Tuesdays here in the Rice Center, we had a Conscious Capitalism event. It came right up. Like Atlanta has the biggest wealth disparity, I think, of any major metropolitan area in the country. It's a legacy of slavery. We know that, whatever. How would you start to have this? Because I think this is the conversation that I want to begin to have with people in a very honest way around the wealth inequality and, investing in underserved communities, and that actually being a virtuous cycle. How would you have that conversation? How would begin to have the difficult conversation?
Well, my instincts tell me that the data is clearly, the data's out there that wealthy, it's not, what's it, 90, 10, 10% on, or 20% controls 80%. I think it's right now maybe 5% control 95%. So I think that gap is closing. And I think that we have to just go in and be real with the data. It's data.
Well, if I were going to do the analysis, and I was going to get the meeting with Jamie and say, like, listen, we have to look at this. This is something that Conscious Capitalism is committed to fixing. We actually want to address this. What specific analysis would you have us do? What would you have us look at? Is it the wealth distribution? But then also, is it something around, is it specific anecdotes like T. Dallas Smith or even this gentleman at the airport, and say, this is how much was invested and here's how many jobs he's creating? You're laughing at that.
We're laughing because I'm figuring it out.
Okay. We're figuring it out. We're all figuring out. This is what we're figuring out.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. My basic premises is I think Metro Atlanta is a great laboratory to start, right? So I think we take the 10 county area, because they have changed dramatically demographically. Gwinnett, Cobb has happened real quick, right? Okay, Georgia changed the elections, particularly at the Senate level, right? Think about it. This is a southern state. We have two Democratic, one Jewish, one black in the Senate in the South, and it's all because of Metro Atlanta, right? Hands down, because of just the demographics and the voter registration that has been accomplished. So I think we go and we take a designated area and we go all in on the household, who owns, who's renting, income, wealth, okay? Most of the wealth for most people are going to be in the house, okay? And maybe some investments if they're working 401k. Okay, we really figure out by race what's going on, and then do the comparisons. And then I think the other piece we do is we go and look at consumer, how we're spending our money. Okay, so we know African Americans are spending more disproportionate amount of their income on beauty, health, and those items, because hair salons, beauty supply, it amazes me. I'm in the real estate business. If you lease to a hair salon, barbershop, or a beauty supply, it's like a long-term lease, right? So, because we're spending money on certain things. We get all of that data, and then we also start looking at the public, what's going on with the tax revenue, because these are areas that have majority. I mean, Gwinnett, 5 commissioners, 3 are black. Cobb, 5 commissioners, 3 are black. Okay, how do you take that public policy and political strength and turn it into a real strength that lifts not just black people, but lifts the whole community?
Yeah, lifts the whole city, the whole whatever. And I love that. I also agree that Atlanta's a laboratory. It really is. And we were even talking about this in our last strategy session for the chapter. Like, I really want us to do conscious capitalism. It's one thing to have these conversations. I think they're beautiful. Obviously, you can tell I'm really passionate about it. But I also want us to actually do conscious capitalism, like to do this thing that you're talking about. I would like us 5 years from now to do this, like to create the stakeholder map and actually do this so that Atlanta is like a shining example of these principles, like that where we actually do these things and they work. So that's, just a strong.
Yeah, the other one is Delta. I think Delta and the airport.
Okay.
I think if we dive deep into the airport, and we start looking at the direct and indirect jobs and the wealth that that airport has created, particularly for people of color, and whether it's employment, whether it's owning a business, I think it would be a staggering number.
Okay, so that's a good roadmap for us.
Yeah, because Delta's employment base in Atlanta is close to 30% African American, and then we can't. There was a Rotary had a session that Hispanics will be in 2050, Metro Atlanta, I think it will be 25% Hispanic, maybe 28% black, 30. It's a majority. We're minority majority by 2050. So we also got to be aware of those trends too, because that's the future.
Yeah, it is. Atlanta has like 150 countries represented in it, or more in the metro area. So I think, once again, this makes Atlanta a perfect laboratory for us to, in this conversation about equality and distribution of wealth and distribution of resources, to get beyond black and white, because it's no longer black and white. We have to consider all the different segmentations of diversity. There's age diversity, there's racial diversity, there's gender diversity, there's ideological diversity. All of those things we need to bring everybody along. That's certainly my strong commitment and passion.
Right,
and to lift everybody.
And then you just build off of that, and then you hopefully, once you get the data, you can start taking it to other parts of the world. We're the best laboratory for this around economic diversity uplift.
Yeah, very good.
So,
well, certainly I would love to have this conversation with you until we actually transform Atlanta into this wonderful conscious place that we are, we're striving for. But, I think our time's up. So, audience, I've been here with Jerome Russell, president and co-owner of the Russell family companies, and it's been a great morning with you on Capitalism Done Right. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.